5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
So, do you want to send your DNA to space, like to orbit or the moon? No, really, you can already do that. Lifeship is a California-based startup offering that service. And they have already sold thousands of their kits to collect your DNA. Hear about their story from founder Ben Haldeman, who was also an early employee at Planet, a well-known Earth observation company. Enjoy.
My name is Raphael Rodkin, and I'm an investor and advisor to space companies. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing should be taken as investment advice. This podcast is sponsored by Nano Avionics, a satellite manufacturer and mission integrator. Their technologies enable many space companies worldwide to offer services that improve life right here on Earth, such as providing global connectivity, conducting Earth observation, or contributing to scientific discoveries. Check them out, and also check out my episode with the CEO and co-founder. Sadly, I am not a rocket scientist, but I'm an alumnus of the International Space University. ISU offers a number of educational programs about space worldwide. Check them out at isunet.edu.
And just some final things before we start the episode about ourselves. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. If you want us help expand our work, you can do so and support us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast, and we'll also put that link in the episode notes. And lastly, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. Hey, space enthusiasts. Welcome back to another episode of the Space Business Podcast. Our guest today is Ben Haldeman, and he's the founder and CEO of a space startup called Lifeship. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Raphael. Good to be here. Yeah, excited to chat.
Great. Yeah, same here. So let's start as usual. Could you please give us the elevator pitch on Lifeship, please?
Yep. So Lifeship's a mission to take humanity to the stars. We're starting with DNA biobanks in space, because if you were going to take 1 million people to another solar system, it would probably involve taking DNA and biobanks or fertilized eggs, but it's going to involve biological materials getting sent to space. So we've started with DNA biobanks in space because I'm into agile aerospace and starting small, and we both have a consumer product for people to add their DNA and their life story, as well as a bigger mission to preserve the DNA of all different species from Earth and the story of humanity.
Kind of like a Noah's Ark, I guess. Also, Noah's Ark in case we like mess up this planet, we'll have like no humanity.
Yeah, so there's two parts. It's an off-world backup, which makes sense. There are existential risks, but the bigger thing is that it's a hopeful mission for humanity to create the seeds of Earth and spread life in the universe, and that maybe that is our biggest role here, is to continue life and ripple life across the galaxy. So yeah, I see it as a hopeful, inspirational mission.
Okay, so this of course begs the question. Typically, we have guests on this show, and they're like, they're starting some, let's say, Earth observation company, and then there's questions like, "Hey, why did you start your Earth observation company?" "Oh, you used to work at an Earth observation company," which I think, by the way, you did as well. And so it's like, it's less clear to me here. It's like, how did you come up with this? And I see like maybe like I think this was like an Interstellar, the movie. They were like sending DNA around. It was in some other sci-fi works. But how did you come up with this?
Yeah, I worked on instruments to look for life on Mars in grad school at Berkeley. And then I spent 8 years building big telescopes to find exoplanets around other star systems. And then I was one of the early employees at Planet Labs. We built over 300 satellites to image the whole Earth. So I looked for life out there. I looked for places where life could exist or could one day go, and then turn the telescopes around and use space to help Earth at Planet Labs. And after Planet, I took a bit of a time. I felt like I was meant to start a company, but I didn't want to force it and just make up another satellite company. And I spent time in the rainforest down in Central America. And on one of the trips down to the rainforest, I was deep in the rainforest. I meditated under this giant grandmother tree on this like 8-hour journey by myself in the rainforest. And in this meditation, I saw like I viscerally, like deeply embodied, saw the story of life evolving on Earth and coming out of the ocean onto land, up into the air, and that life filled out every niche of the ecosystems here on Earth, and that the Earth wanted to reproduce and wanted to spread the seeds of life beyond, and the Earth was ready to bloom. So the Earth grew humans with the purpose of solving the technological challenges. And that's why we're here. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're here to create the seeds to spread life in the universe. And so, yeah, I feel like the rainforest and the forest and the earth gave me this mission. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm here to create the seeds. And yeah, and that could turn into biobanks like Interstellar, or it could turn into actual seeds that are meant to spread life. But the whole path towards spreading life in the universe and making it inspirational mission that's inclusive and that all of humanity can participate in.
Okay, so walk us through the path from that inspiration to product, right? Because my understanding is you have a product that's available right now.
Yeah, I went through, I was one of the early engineers at Planet Labs, and we really were essentially writing the book on agile aerospace and reinventing how satellites are put into space. And so I started to think about, okay, spreading life in the universe, seeds to the stars, biobanks in space. What is the first agile thing I could do? And I thought, oh, DNA and information are absolutely tiny. I can start with small capsules and start getting these capsules on different missions to space, missions to the moon. And so I started getting space on different missions and designed a tiny capsule and then created a consumer product, which is a kit kind of like 23andMe, but where you get this box and it has a saliva swab. You go through an experience, you go through a survey about your life and your legacy and your purpose and who you are and what you want to be remembered for. And so created a product and started selling those. And we did some marketing campaigns online and sold about 3,000 of them. And then now we've launched the space twice. And so it's really been a step-by-step, get people on board and send more and more stuff to space.
So basically people can right now buy one of those kits and then they somehow get their DNA. I mean, it's just like 23andMe where you spit in a vial and they send it back to you, or how does it work?
You go online, you order a kit. Right now, our introductory kits are $99. So we're making this affordable for our mass market. Our mission is to get millions of people part of this. And so you get a kit. It has a saliva swab. You swab your mouth. It comes with everything to send that back. You register online and go through an online experience. That experience will become more and more like AI interviewing you about your life story and writing your biography, and then eventually AI creating your virtual avatar. So it's like becomes more and more like you're uploading your consciousness too. And so you mail that back to us, and then we extract your DNA out of your cells, and then your actual real biological DNA goes on these missions. And you get to watch the rocket launch. You get the lander going to the moon, has live video on it. So it's a participatory space experience. And then once we've delivered and have a cool community experience, then we'll have a subscription where you can become a member and you can launch on a rocket every couple of months to different locations and continue to build out your story and add your photos. And it becomes the time capsule and forever like personal golden record of you to send you to the stars.
And so you have paying customers already who have bought these kits, right? So you have collected DNA already. And so has this flown to space yet? And if so, how many subjects or whatever we should call it?
So we flew, you have the Dragon capsule in the background. We flew on Crew 4 and Crew 5, which were both astronaut missions to the International Space Station. And the astronauts launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. And on board with the 4 astronauts was one of our capsules on both of these missions. So we've flown up to the International Space Station twice, and we had about 1,000 people on board that and about 500 other species. So this may be the first off-world biobank. And that, we sent 2 of them up to the space station. We are on 2 different rockets to the moon, and and a few more missions coming up too.
But the ones that went on the crew missions, so were they in the capsule and then they stayed? So did they come back, or did they actually somehow stay in space?
They did come back. So these ones were, it's harder to get stuff to stay on the ISS indefinitely. They really care for that. And because these are initial ones, we send them back down, and then those people's DNA will actually go up in a future one if we go up to the ISS. So we may do one to the ISS, which is the longer term one at some point, and then would likely send those same people back up to it.
Because I wonder, and I don't know how much sort of direct market research you've done with your customers, but I wonder, it'd be really interesting to understand the motivations of the people who buy these kits and want to send their DNA to space, right? Because it could be a range of things. Right? It could be sort of like people who are fine with going up to the ISS and coming back because it's sort of like, hey, my DNA has been to space, it's whatever. But then, of course, at the extreme end, there could be people like, again, who probably like me have watched too many science fiction movies and read too many science fiction books. I'll give you another reference, which you're also maybe familiar with. Have you read The 3-Body Problem?
I read the first one. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's not in the first one. I think it's even the second or third one. But basically, at some point in time, they sent out the preserved brain, just the brain of one of the main characters, to be picked up with the hope that it would be picked up by one of the aliens, and they would have the technology to basically, build a body around them and access the brain, which then actually happens. And I'm stopping here of spoilers on the book. It's an amazing trilogy that everybody should read. But of course, what I'm getting is at the extreme end, I could imagine people also thinking like, well, maybe, I shoot my DNA. Of course, it doesn't work if it comes back, but maybe on one of your future missions, you go out of the solar system at the extreme or something like this. And people could think, well, maybe some super smart alien species could pick up my DNA and then construct another version of me. The question being, have you done this market research, or if not, what's your guess of like your customers' motivation?
Yeah, so we've sold through 3,000 of these. We've gotten about, I think, like 700 surveys back about why people did it. So we do have good data. I think the number one reason is like they love the mission, like it tickles their brain in a sci-fi way. They're into the let's preserve a copy of Earth in space. Let's like take steps to send me to the stars, send life to the stars, and are really part of the mission. And then like part of that, or it might be another customer set, are like, I've always wanted to go to space. I've dreamt my whole life of going to space, and in some way I can now be part of it. And that's a similar market to, I've always wanted to work for SpaceX, or always wanted to work for NASA, or so there's people who just want to touch something that goes to space essentially and be part of it, or look up at the moon and know a piece of them made it there. So those are maybe 2 different demographics. And then there's another one, which is more the sentimental family or meaningful connection where, me and my grandfather are going together, and we'll look up and remember this. Or I gave this to my dad for Christmas, and it's something that is like memorable and unique. And so it does meet that, or like a couple goes together and gets to think about it. And we have ones for pets as well. So you get to remember your pets and put it up there. So there is like the more sentimental and even like spiritual connect with the cosmos part of that, and connect with the universe. And then some people are like, I want to live forever, and this is an affordable way, kind of like cryogenics, to preserve myself. So it does touch audiences from a number of different ways, both from a science space audience and like more spiritual connection, emotional, sentimental. And like part of my goal with this is to equally be able to have our kits for sale in like a planetarium science museum, as well as like a woo-woo crystals like astrology shop, and bridge both audiences that are into more the spiritual astrology side, as well as the science astronomy side.
Which actually brings me to my next question. So you said you sold 3,000 of those kits already? That's that's a reasonably significant number. So I mean, first of all, congratulations on that. But then also in terms of understanding, because I think many of our listeners are potential entrepreneurs or actual entrepreneurs. Like, just your lessons. What did the go-to-market look like? How did you market this? Because that's such a different product, right?
Totally. So we sold most of those through Facebook ads. We got them close to break even. We didn't profit on these ones, but it was a good initial market test, and and then we got a good initial customer base and excited people as part of it. And now I'm working on refining the story, the vision, getting videos, getting content out. So that we relaunch it in a profitable way. And then also I've been direct to consumer is hard. I'm confident that we'll get it there and we'll get our customer acquisition costs down. But I've also gotten a fair bit of revenue over the last couple of months from B2B partnerships, where we are this space platform. Essentially, we're putting capsules across space and time, and there are organizations we're partnered with that want to send 1 million photos to the moon, or want to send all their members as part of a community's profiles up there. And so we've been bringing in decent revenue from that. And so I am balancing both this as a B2B time capsule as a service, essentially, which I see this becoming a whole platform there, as well as the direct to consumer, and building both of those out.
So since we're using Facebook ads, which I also have some experience with, I mean, one good thing is they obviously allow you very precise targeting, and then you also have a very precise idea what worked, what didn't work. So since you've done this a few thousand times now, and then obviously that means if you 3,000 sales, you may have hundreds of thousands of like impressions of these ads. Was there anything interesting you noticed demographically, like what kind of people buy your product?
Yeah. So, and this may be skewed with Facebook, but we got the lowest customer acquisition cost, the highest return on ad spend from an older demographic, like 55 or 60 plus. And I think a lot of those, are people who both think about their legacy, but also have been in the space since the Apollo missions. And so it resonated with that. And then it resonated with, 45 to 50-year-old, both men and women, that felt more like for a gift audience. And it did best. The only time we got it slightly profitable was when it was Christmas season and holiday season. And so it does, I think the way it's framed right now, it attracts people who would maybe do something like name a star in a way, where it is a memorable space gift. And there is a whole big market there of people looking for a memorable, unique, novel space gift. And so that in a way is like our beachhead customer is someone looking for a gift there as well. It's some of the insights.
So picking up, so the name the star thing is interesting, right? Because I mean, effectively that's obviously kind of nonsense, right? But you get I think you get like some sort of certificate, right?
Certificate, and millions of people have done it.
Sure. Yeah. The people who buy your kit and send you the DNA, what do they get? So
they get the kit. The kit comes with a mission patch, stickers. It comes with a golden ticket to the moon, and then you get invited to watch the rocket launch live. You could go in person or online. You get to watch it land on the moon, and then afterwards you get a certificate saying the launch date, where it is, your GPS locations on the moon. It's not GPS, but the location on the moon. And so you get a certificate like saying, I am here, essentially. And a lot of people, there is a whole market of the name of star. It's a certificate you hang on your wall or frame. And there's people who buy a plot of land in Scotland, and there's a bunch of these. And so this is an actual real space mission with an actual, this could be very significant in the story of the universe and like as humanity's legacy of continuing life. But it's an experience.
So you mentioned the moon there. So I guess we should really talk about your future missions, because so far, again, they've been sort of like round trip back to Earth missions. But yeah, talk a little bit about what you have in the plans for future missions.
Yep. So we're partnered with a nonprofit called Arc Mission Foundation that's saving a cultural archive of humanity, and we've included DNA in that, and that launches on with Astrobotic as the lander, and that launches on a ULA Vulcan rocket, and that we've already shipped. It's on the rocket. Vulcan is Vulcan's first launch, so they're working out some final bugs and stuff. So that should launch this year.
The second stage. Yep.
That should launch this year. And then we have one of our own capsules on Firefly, and that's planned for launch next year. Mid next year. And then we're getting on a rover Astrolab, and that'll launch on a Starship rocket. And so that'll be on a rover. So we have 3 moon missions. One will be on a rover, but that's probably not until about 2026. Firefly is next year, and the Astrobotic one should be this year. And then we're actually on a mission going out of the solar system, which I thought getting out of the solar system would take 5 or 10 years for me to get on one of those missions. But we're on with Astroforge, which is an asteroid mining company. They're doing an asteroid flyby mission next year, and we're on that, and that'll actually continue out of the solar system in about 35 years. But we're launching next year to a true Voyager style mission where we're out of the system. And on that one, we care about the responsible use of space, and we're not putting biological DNA on that one, but we are putting digital DNA on that one and digital information and stuff, just because we want to, take a responsible step into not contaminating the universe, but also I see that there's a path towards humanity wanting to spread life, and so we want to be thought leaders in that and take a responsible path on that. But leaving the solar system is super excited, and we're working on how we turn that mission into a big mission for humanity.
So when you're saying digital, you basically just somehow put the DNA sequence, the sequence of the bases on there.
Yeah. So that'll be more because we have to sequence the DNA and add the digital sequence, your ACTG, your base.
Sure. And are those missions already on sale right now?
We're doing the moon ones. You can get on the moon ones, but the one out of the solar system, I'm working on what the product offering is there and how we're doing that.
Okay. And the moon ones, what's the price for the moon ones?
All the moon ones are $99. $99 to send your DNA to the moon. And then we do have VIP higher products, but we don't have those on the website.
And so the one that's going out of the solar system, of course, that's kind of an interesting one with regard to something we already talked about before, the sort of hypothetical possibility, like the golden record, right? That it gets picked up at some point in time. But then I guess, you should also give them, let's say some aliens pick them up, right? If you just give them the DNA sequence, you have to give them the code as well, right? So do you include like a manual of how the genetic code works, how it transcripts and translates into, amino acids, and then what that means?
That's a good point. We have all of Wikipedia on there, so that might include some bit. But yes, we want to have essentially like a Rosetta Stone of this is how you understand our language. This is how you understand our biology. This is a record of human knowledge. And then one of the things we're working on also is including a AI large language model on it, because if aliens send us probes, they probably would communicate to us by sending an artificial intelligence that was able to communicate with us. And so we're at that point where, any significantly intelligent species is probably going to be communicating with an AI. And so we're at the point where we can send out a large language model and on this, send instructions on how to boot that up and run it. And then whoever found this could communicate with something that communicates like a human with them.
Yeah, fair enough. And so these are effectively, leaving aside the extrasolar mission, the rest is effectively biomaterials. Is there any sort of, additional bureaucratic hurdles or clearance you have to go through? I mean, it sounds like even to the moon, you're sending the biomaterials. Is that a straightforward thing to do?
The moon is pretty straightforward. There is so NASA has planetary protection guidelines, and they've opened up the moon for most biological materials, or opened up the moon for biological materials with the exception of the polar regions where there's ice and frozen water. You can't send just anything to the ice caps at this point, but NASA has opened it up to send pretty much anything to most of the surface of the moon. To send something to Mars, which we want to do, that is trickier. And DNA, if it's encapsulated right and enclosed, we think that we'll be able to get it on to Mars, because also DNA can't reproduce, and it's just a molecule that can't that would just break down over time. And so we think we'll be able to get, and we've had conversations around it, that we think we'll be able to get a DNA bank to Mars, but that'll be trickier. And the moon is pretty open right now.
Okay, and speaking of these trips to the moon and the Mars, of course, the other difference to the trips you've done so far is that you're going into a high radiation environment. I mean, wouldn't that just degrade the DNA over time, or is it somehow protected?
Yeah, so the DNA, we preserve the DNA on this archival membrane, and we embed that in a polymer we call synthetic amber polymer inside a metal capsule. The metal capsule provides some radiation protection. We mount this capsule on the underside of a big plate on the lander. And so that big plate provides further radiation, because all the radiation comes from the sun direction. So if it's under a plate, then the plate blocks a lot. So it does have fairly good radiation blockage, a good chunk of metal blocking it. But over time, we could drill these down into the surface of the moon, put them in underground, put them in a lava tube, or put them in a permanently shadowed region where they get further protection. And this is part of our agile process, is this first one. DNA on Earth, we've found DNA almost, I think, over 2 million years old. We've decoded DNA. And so DNA can last a long time. We haven't found dinosaur DNA on Earth yet. But we think this should last at least 10,000 years. Your DNA should be recoverable for.
And so beyond the moon missions and then the extra solar system mission, I guess in your vision, if you look 10 years out, where do you see Lifeship? Yeah,
so within genomics, there's been two market segments, really, there's been essentially learn about your health and learn about your ancestry. And I think we're this new kind of genomics company that is the future and where are you going? And it's about, and that there will be a forever record of humanity, and that for many people, and it's not just space people, it will no longer make sense to die and disappear without a trace. You'll want to pass on your photos, your memories, you'll want to pass on your DNA, and you'll want to pass on your avatar, which can talk like you talk and tell your stories like you tell your stories. And you'll want to do that in the right, most secure way. And you'll not want to just do that to space. You'll want to pass that on to your great-great-grandkids. So part of the vision here is that we are a digital time capsule of you that secures you on the blockchain in a way that no one can just decode you, that your future generations, even if you don't pass on to them a code or anything, can do a DNA test and unlock you, and then talk to your avatar and talk to you and get your childhood stories. So and maybe in 100 years from now, you want to be open sourced and tell everyone your stories, or maybe you want to be open source anyway. And so it's meant to be the forever record of you and the forever record of yourself that then could also be used to populate a new world and potentially be born again. And so we're this way to pass you on to the future, to your future generations, and also empower you to decide, do I get used again? Does my twin get grown on a new world someday? And so it opens up all these different conversations and possibilities around what happens to you in the future. And that this becomes something that many millions of people do. And so that's like our consumer product is that. But then I see what we're doing is we're sending probes across space and time, all like thousands of these, millions of these that go out there across the solar system, across the galaxy, and that this becomes a platform that all different organizations and apps and companies and individuals can be part of, that is like connecting life across space and time, and or like the operating system of space time, and that companies can build eternity-based apps on it. Companies can build stuff to connect people to each other or to future generations, or maybe it's even a platform that is not human centric and that is about something that other intelligences could connect through it. So I see this as this space-time probe capsule platform that bridges connection across the universe, and that all different a whole ecosystem of companies will be built on top of.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the digital avatar. There was one recent episode of another podcast, the Lex Friedman podcast, which you may know as well. And I swear there was a lot of discussion on that. It may have even been an episode with Mark Zuckerberg. I guess Meta would be like such a logical company to come up with this, right? Given all of the information they have already. Which is a very interesting topic by itself, and not exclusively space related. As you said, we could use this on Earth, but then also send it to space. In terms of other sort of physical products, I mean, now you have the DNA. Then, of course, in terms of like dead physical products, I think there have been at least a couple of businesses for a few years that where you can send your ashes to space, which I guess is also like another legacy thing. But for example, I mentioned the example from the 3-body problem where they sent a preserved brain. And then, of course, there have been for many years people on Earth who've been freezing themselves after death, right? Is there any, do you see any future products like this where you send like a brain or an entire body, or somebody really insists on that?
Potentially. So we do DNA, we do ashes as well. And I can see a path towards fertilized eggs. Like lots of people have done in vitro fertilization and have their eggs stored in freezers and no longer want to use them anymore, and so they could include those. I haven't thought about pieces of brain, but there's I guess there's possibility for other biological materials that we may send up there. And then there's all the different other things people would put in a time capsule, as far as like art and photos and memories and kits for a wedding where you both send your DNA up and your wedding vows. And so there's essentially like the hallmark of space, where all different sort of memorable experiences or gifts or cards or to celebrate different things could have a specific experience associated with it. And then I see a whole personal growth sort of product around this, where it really is an opportunity for someone to sit down and think about their life and their legacy and their purpose and their story and who they are. And we can use AI to help people in a growthful personal experience around reflecting on their life and who they are.
And coming back to, so the entrepreneurial aspect of this podcast. So we also think very often about how this kind of startup is funded. I mean, for everything you're telling me, and you've had 3,000 kits sold already, this could be something that you could even completely bootstrap. Or how are you thinking about funding your business?
Yeah, I've mostly bootstrapped it. I raised a few $100,000 a couple of years ago, which helped get the product and the initial part marketing pushed. And and now I'm bringing in revenue from business partnerships of putting content on these. And so I did go down a path of looking to do a fundraise and building towards that. And I'm well prepared for that if it feels right and feels like the right timing. But I've been starting to bring in more revenue from B2B. And I feel like that'll start to then fund making the consumer product profitable. So I'm focused on the product, the business, bringing in revenue right now and not chasing money from fundraising. But it's been a long at time. I've had more of a team. Now I have a few advisors that help in different ways, and it's mostly me. And I do feel there's a lot of opportunity here. And if I find the right partners, that I am willing to bring on some people that help accelerate this.
And just to expand a little bit, you've mentioned the B2B element a few times now. What actually is? Can you give us some examples, like what kind of partners you have for B2B, and then maybe also if you're looking for additional partners, what kind of additional partners you are looking for and you envision?
Totally. So we're partnered with a group called Lunark, and their Lunark is doing 1 million photos on the moon and getting organizations and nonprofits from around the world to create a cultural record of humanity through photos. So they paid to put 1 million photos on the moon. We're partnered with MoonDAO, which is a DAO that has a mission of building a self-sufficient, self-sustaining, or self-governing, self-sustaining settlement on the moon by 2030. And that DAO is engaging their members and putting their constitution on the moon. Thus, there's another group called Interstellar Foundation, which is working on like a golden record like message, and we're including that message in the capsule. And then there's some STEM and STEAM projects that we're working on. I am working on essentially including like tastes of humanity. So drops of chocolate, drops of wine, drops of secret sauce from certain recipes. So brands that have flavors or other things that we include. And we are like a seed bank, and I'm working towards getting special seeds on there that would also bring in revenue, but then also seeds that are representative of humanity. And then there's all sorts of art, cultural stuff. There's NFTs that can be done with this. We have all different species, and we're working towards a way to sponsor the different species on board that also goes to preserve ecosystems today. And there's just different. It's also almost like a monument as a service as well, where if there's something where you want to raise money from fundraisers and have a special, unique reward level, then their name can get etched into this thing on the moon as a specific reward level. So it's a way to engage people around a space mission. And then we're partnering with other space communities as well that it's like a space mission as a service for them, where their audience gets to go to space. So all different partnerships for anywhere from content to engaging audiences that will go to space and go to the moon.
Great. And so kind of closing off here at the end of the episode, typically ask, and it's particularly interesting in your case, so if you weren't doing Lifeship, but I mean, you have obviously quite a bit of experience in the space sector in various roles, as you walked us through, like being an early employee at Planet, but also all of your previous scientific work. So of course you came up with Lifeship in the end through this meditative experience, but you obviously have a very good view of the space sector at large. So if you weren't doing Lifeship, what do you think you might be doing in the space sector?
Yeah, I've also invested in several space companies. I do some advising. I get asked to be part of different space companies. So it's possible one of them would grab my attention and get me more into it, or I could see myself getting involved with a VC firm and starting to work with more space companies. I like being out there. I like meeting all different space companies. I like weaving visions together and helping make connections. And so I'm interested in all that. I do. I love space settlement. I love missions that help Earth as well. So mine kind of falls. It just feels like the absolute perfect thing that's both about Earth and about life and about humanity, as well as about space and big visions. But I think maybe there'd be something come along that would have excited me otherwise.
Yeah, and in terms of settling a space, we're also both investors in Interstellar Lab in France, which if all goes well is going to allow us to grow crops in other places. Which I guess is somewhere similar.
Interstellar is
bringing our life to other places.
Yep. Interstellar Lab is definitely one of my favorite companies, and it just feels so aligned with what with my vision around life and space, and it's similar. Interstellar Labs building biopods to grow plants in space, and I'm building seed capsules to preserve the seeds and spread the seeds of Earth space.
Yeah. And coming full circle, I mean, I feel we've talked about science fiction a lot already, but that is always the last question on this podcast, is basically about favorite science fiction you have, and it could be movies, TV series, books.
Yeah. Right now I'm reading Hail Mary, Andy Weir, and that's captivating me. So in this moment, I'm most excited about that. And again, there's so much that I'm working on that weaves into a lot of different sci-fi, and so it's cool to see that.
Good. That one, I must admit, I haven't read yet, but Hail Mary is certainly on my list. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. And very last question I should have asked you before. If people want to buy one of your kits, what's the easiest way? Is it going to your website?
Yes, lifeship.com.
Okay, good. And we'll also put that in the episode notes. So Ben, thank you very much. Best of luck with the future missions.
Okay, thanks, Raphael. Good to chat.
Well, that's it for another nominal episode of the Space Business Podcast. If you like this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, such as iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. Also consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/spacebusinesspodcast. If the podcast got you interested in learning more about the business opportunities in the space economy, check out my new online course on space entrepreneurship on udemy.com. The link is in the episode description. Lastly, if you have any feedback, including ideas for guests, and that may include yourself if you have an exciting space story to tell, or interested in being a sponsor, drop us an email at spacebusinesspodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to seeing you for the next episode.